In today's episode, we're talking all about winter driving with Brian Hart, Training Manager for Young Drivers of Canada, and Scott Marshall, Education and Training Consultant with over 35 years of road safety experience. Their long and diverse backgrounds in road safety and driver training will make for an interesting discussion into strategies for safe winter travel. Scott will emphasize the need for planning ahead.
So the adjustments is not just the physical adjustments as far as accelerating and braking and steering, but it's also the adjustments of mentality of winter driving.
Yes, the way that we handle things.
Right.
Yes.
So what do you think the main adjustment that drivers have trouble with when it comes to winter driving, Brian?
And Brian points out a common but often forgotten reason for winter driving problems.
So people leave at the same times that they would normally leave.
Right.
But because of the conditions of the road, they run a little bit late.
That's right.
They feel some stress
And
of
then
being late.
They put pressure on themselves to get there at the same times. And then it causes them to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Or in slick conditions, it's like, ooh, that doesn't work out here.
They also discuss essential car preparation tips, such as installing winter tires.
When the temperature drops to 7 and is falling, that's the time to switch to winter tires. But in the spring, when the temperatures rise to above 7,
Let's get them off of there.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. But while you're using your winter tires, you're saving your all-season tires.
Yes.
And so some people ask, well, what's really the big difference?
Finally, they stress patience and awareness.
We have to assume that they could make mistakes or things could go wrong. So we've got to be very alert and aware of what the other drivers are doing as well. Our driving may be nice and fine, but they could still cause us a problem if we're not careful.
Welcome to YD Drives the Future, a podcast where we cover all aspects of driver education and road safety. For over 50 years, Young Drivers of Canada has been dedicated to educating drivers of all skill levels and changing their driving behaviors for the safety of all road users. Let's jump into today's episode.
Winter driving.
Oh, it sends chills down my spine.
Doesn't it, though?
It
and
does.
we're here. My name is Scott Marshall. I have 36 years experience as a road safety educator, and I'm joined with...
Brian Hart. I am the training manager for Young Drivers of Canada currently, and I have 17 years of experience in this area.
So we've got about 1 billion years put together.
Yes.
And we're not good at math, but that's okay.
No.
But we're going to give some tips for people who perhaps are driving for the very first time in winter weather.
That's a good idea.
And also some reminders for people who forget.
Oh, those ones that forget what it was like last year.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was like 8 months ago
Mm-hmm.
or what you had for breakfast yesterday.
Right.
So,
Well, I have a good memory, but it's short.
It's short, exactly. So one of the things I think we want to start off with is the adjustments for winter driving.
That's a good idea.
So the adjustments is not just the physical adjustments as far as accelerating and braking and steering, but it's also the adjustments of mentality of winter driving.
Yes, the way that we handle things.
Right.
Yes.
So what do you think the main adjustment that drivers have trouble with when it comes to winter driving, Brian?
I think they forget that it does take a lot longer in the winter. We have to adjust those things, but we have life pressures that put that kind of time restraint on us. And I don't think we adjust for the time necessary in the winter.
So people leave at the same times that they would normally leave.
Right.
But because of the conditions of the road, they run a little bit late.
That's right.
They feel some stress
And
of
then
being late.
they put pressure on themselves to get there at the same times. And then it causes them to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Or in slick conditions, it's like, ooh, that doesn't work out here.
That's right. That's right. I think a part of it is giving yourself a reality check that whether you're leaving for school or leaving for work, give yourself some extra time. And part of knowing how much extra time really depends on how far your commute is.
Yes.
If you only have a 10, 15-minute commute, add an extra 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure.
But if your commute is 30 minutes or more, you may want to even double it.
Maybe even double it is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if there's some new fallen snow or the very first snowfall.
Yes, the very first snowfall, exactly.
Because people do forget what it's like to
Exactly.
drive
And
in
how
that.
many times do we drive along out there and we see on the first snowfall that tow truck drivers are just rubbing their hands and going, here it comes.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So one of the things is fact is you're going to lose some traction, but let's talk about winter season versus winter weather.
Right.
So the season itself, you're colder and things like that. So part of the adjustment is the clothing that you wear.
Yes.
So you want to make sure that your coat is breathable. You're not like like mummified.
Right. You don't look like the Michelin Man sitting in your car. Yes.
That's right. And even the hoods, like the coats that have the hoods on.
If it's
that's right. If it's a big hood and you go to check your blind spot, you're looking at the
right at your inside of your hood.
That's right.
Can't see anything.
Perhaps a toque.
Yes, there's a good idea.
We're Canadian, so it's toque.
It's a toque. You got it.
Right.
That's right.
And make sure that your dome is covered because I like
that. You need that.
I have definitely.
I'm getting there. Yeah,
that's right. And even your hands too, whether your gloves are on, you want to have some gloves if you're going to wear gloves that you
something
can feel.
Light.
Yeah,
and just like a nice light little glove that would keep the chill off of your hands too, but still. That can work. I don't want to be wearing ski gloves where I can't.
That's right. I have a heated steering wheel.
So do I.
So for those who have a heated steering wheel, I turn that on after I start the car.
Immediately.
And it's warm right away. I won't wear gloves.
No, same
even
here.
In the
I don't
time.
because I have that luxury.
That's right. Once I get into the vehicle, my gloves are off. And then I put them in my glove box. The adjusting of the techniques is also, especially if you're new at it, something I've always done with students who it's their first time driving in the winter is pull out onto a snow-covered side street where there's no traffic.
Right.
And then listen. Tap the accelerator somewhat firmly.
And see what happens.
Yeah. And listen to the wheels spin. So that way you know how quickly you could lose that traction.
It's a good idea. I've done the same thing with my students as well in the winter. We don't always get a chance to practice winter driving. Much as students say, can I practice? It's like, well, if you can predict the snow, I'll take you out.
That's right.
But if we get a snow-covered parking lot one day, I'm inclined to go in there and say, let's do that.
That's right.
Let's see what happens if you brake a little too hard.
That's right. So I do the acceleration.
Yeah.
And so you listen, you hear the wheel spin, and then ease off immediately.
Right.
But then try it softer.
And see what happens.
That way you know your outer limits of how quickly you can accelerate.
And let's see if we get a little speed up. What happens if we hit the brake a little bit too hard?
Right.
When do we start sliding in there?
That's right.
Or let's say we make a sharper turn.
That's right.
Ooh.
That's right. So understand what your tires can do,
right,
and what your acceleration can do, and your braking can do. There's an element of time you talked about earlier about people who rush their commute and they don't give themselves enough time. I think it's also important that drivers realize if they're new at winter driving or they've forgotten, they need more time to make a turn.
Yes.
Because there's the acceleration and the braking and the steering.
And we want to keep those things fairly separate in those conditions.
That is right. That's right. Such as if you're turning left across the path of another vehicle, you need a larger gap if the roads are covered in snow or slush or ice.
You're going to take it through that turn slower, and the oncoming vehicle is not going to be able to stop as quick either.
That's right. Do you know there's in inclement weather, there's new math? Did you know that?
New math?
Yeah.
I'm not good at math.
3 equals 1.
Really?
3 right turns equal 1 left turn.
And I've been learning this all along the wrong way.
That's right.
I told you I wasn't good at math.
I know. So the whole idea that if you think it's too risky and you're uncertain that you should be able to make a left turn across the path, why don't you make 3 right turns instead? And that way you still end up going on the same street.
Exactly.
Just go past the street you want, make 3 right turns, and then you're in the clear.
Yes, much like we would do if we had missed a turn in normal weather. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
So we've talked about traction. We talked about time.
Yeah.
One of the best things that gives us traction in the winter tires.
Winter tires. That's right. It's time to get them on.
Now, you notice that we didn't say snow tires.
No, we didn't say snow tires.
Because they're not made of snow.
No, that's right.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
But winter's a season. It's not just the elements.
And we're talking about the science of 7 degrees here.
Very good. So what's the big deal about 7 degrees?
Well, when the pavement starts to get colder, consistent temperatures at 7 or below, the winter tires have better traction. They stick to the roads a lot better.
That's right.
So it's not just snow.
That's right. It's a softer rubber compound.
Right.
And the grooves are wider on a winter tire than there is of an all-season tire.
And they have a lot more siping than most tires do.
That's right.
As well. There's small slits.
There's the element is it worthwhile having a winter tire on? And people talk about having the cost of it. So if some of our viewers are not vehicle owners, you want to make that selling point to the vehicle owner.
Right.
is, are you going to spend $700 on a new set of winter tires every 4 or 5 years? Well, they could even last you longer.
They could, depending on how you take care of them. I mean, it's important to get them off too when you don't want to wear them out in the summers.
That's right. So when the temperature drops to 7 and is falling, that's the time to switch to winter tires. But in the spring, when the temperatures rise to above 7,
let's get them off of there.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. But while you're using your winter tires, you're saving your all-season tires.
Yes.
And so some people ask, well, what's really the big difference? Think of it as a dress shoe versus a winter boot. If you were having a dress shoe on and you ran down the sidewalk or the center of the road and tried to stop.
Slipping all over the place.
Exactly. But if you ran down with your boots, you have less chance of slipping and sliding.
Right. You got more traction in there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because the rubber compound of a winter boot is different than the sole of a dress shoe.
Exactly.
So that's a good comparison, I think, that people can use to
It
adjust.
is, and it's a good idea. I mean, we always replace all 4 tires these days. I can remember back in the day, I don't want to date myself or yourself, but you remember when you used to just put 2 on the front or 2 on the rear?
On the rear, when we had the rear-wheel
drive, it's like,
Yeah.
now it's all the time. And there are certain provinces across the country that have mandated winter tires.
Yes, that's right. So, you're in Quebec, you do need to have winter tires.
You've got to have them.
I think it's a really good investment.
I think so.
It's also peace of mind. And the fact is that not only are you saving the wear and tear of your all-season tires so they can last longer, but you're actually saving fuel.
Yes.
Because your tire will grip more, you're able to accelerate and your wheels aren't spinning so
That's
much
right. Where
that you can get going.
You're using more gas. That's right.
You can also avoid collisions.
We can.
Yeah, because you can get a better grip to get moving
Get
again.
yourself out of the way.
That's right. That's right. So if you're not a vehicle owner, I think it's a good idea to make these comparisons and let the vehicle owner know that, hey, listen, it's better for us.
Yes.
And it's going to help protect our vehicle, things like that.
Definitely.
I remember digging my vehicle out of snow, a big dumping of snow after working all day inside. And I dig out and whatever, and I drive away without any problem. Person opposite me in their all-season tires couldn't get moving after they dug out.
Of course, they probably didn't dig out anyway and just tried to plow through as well.
Well, they actually did dig, but their wheels, they weren't gripping.
And they're just polishing the ice.
Exactly. Now let's talk back to digging out.
Yes.
So sometimes you've got the snow and you ever see people that they clear off enough snow that it's just like a porthole?
There was a guy a couple of years back down east of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, driving through a porthole.
Yeah, and that's all they can see.
He'd taken a credit card and just chills it down a little hole.
So it's not a good idea just to clear a spot that you can see, because you really want to clear out your entire vehicle.
Sure, we want to be able to see everywhere out the vehicle.
So it should be all windows.
360 degrees. All windows.
Yeah.
But not only that, let's get the stuff off the top too.
And why do we have to get the stuff off the top? I mean, we're not seeing through a roof.
No, we're not, but it creates problems for drivers behind. For one, I can be driving along, I'm all clear, there's no snow out there, but all of a sudden I'm driving in a snowstorm behind somebody who hasn't cleared the vehicle off.
That's right. It all blows back. So it's being courteous to the other road users.
That too. But it also creates another problem too, where all of that snow, say in a sedan, now it's covering over their brake lights.
Right.
And I can't tell when they're stopping as easily.
That's right.
How often do we see people driving along where they haven't cleared the hood?
That's
and their
right.
wipers are going like crazy and it's frosting over.
That's right.
Right.
So clearing off your entire vehicle, like as if it's been in a garage, is a good idea. And one other point, because your seating compartment gets warm, the heat goes through the top,
Right.
and all that snow on the roof gets loose underneath.
Oh.
And when you brake firmly,
I saw
it
that
comes
happen to
forward
somebody.
onto your windshield. Now you can't see.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea to make sure that you clear off your entire vehicle.
Yes.
But plan for that.
Right. So it takes more time. Like
That's
we were
right.
talking about earlier.
So
And it's also it's fuel economy too, because it's a matter of aerodynamics.
That's right. Absolutely. So one thing that I've always done, and I've trained my family to do the same thing, is to check the weather forecast the night before.
Yes.
So if you know you're going to get a dumping of snow, even the last couple hours before you get up, that means you're going to need to have 15, 20 minutes of extra time to clear off your entire vehicle.
Right. Get the vehicle a little bit warmed up.
Everything.
Get everything cleared off.
And did you know it's by law, you have to have your license plate visible?
That is correct.
Yeah. So if it's covered in snow, you could be ticketed.
You could be ticketed
by
for
any
that.
provincial police.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You can be.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we have that stuff too.
Yeah.
So winter driving actually starts in the fall
It does.
because it's all about planning.
Mm-hmm.
So although we have a beautiful fall day today as we're recording this,
Almost like summer out there right
I'm getting my winter tires on tomorrow.
Mine are prepped and ready to go next week.
Next week the evenings are below 7.
Right.
So I'm not waiting for the first snowfall.
Nope.
So I made that appointment ahead of time. You can also make sure that your oil is properly adjusted. So you have a thinner oil in the wintertime. So getting a proper oil change before winter is a good idea.
It's always good to have good maintenance on your car going into the winter, especially. We don't want to run into problems where we're stuck in the snow somewhere because of low fluids or poor maintenance on the car.
Including washer fluid. So
yes, we're going to carry an awful lot of washer fluid when we're out there.
A spare jug in the trunk is always a good idea.
Spare jug in the trunk is good.
And when you use that, put another spare in the trunk because you will need that too.
Yep.
I think that's really important as well. So our pre-trip, we've done that as far as talking about winter tires.
Mm-hmm.
Winter tires, I think, is super important. But you're now driving in the winter, and the adjustments we make, we talked about time. Give yourself more time to get to your destination. But what about when you're in traffic? What advice would you give someone if they're following other drivers in traffic?
Oh, stay back.
Yeah.
Give yourself more space.
And why is that?
I need space to be able to either get out of the way or be able to stop slower so the person behind me doesn't wind up in my trunk somewhere.
That's right. And if your tires aren't as good as the vehicle ahead, you may not stop quite as quickly.
And then we're having to deal with a situation we don't want to.
Exactly. And there's a point. I remember there was a time in the winter, my father had all-season tires, and he wouldn't buy winter tires. He didn't believe in them. And I had to borrow his car. And I didn't like it because they weren't gripping so well.
Right.
I had a tremendous amount of following distance. And normally you'd have a bare minimum of 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I had 4 or 5 in the city.
Sure.
Because I couldn't trust this vehicle to stop. And when I returned the car to my dad, I even offered to buy him the winter tires. I said, Dad, he said, if it's...
I'll look you up next time to see if you can buy my new ones.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things is that, you have to give yourself that time, as you say, to stop or to get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And because the acceleration aspect of it, if you brake and realize that you can't stop, you do need that room to get out of the way as well.
The room to be able to move. It's going to be tough to do that in the snow.
That's right. So 4 or 5 seconds, I think,
I would think
good.
In the winter, doubling things out is probably a reasonable idea for those heavier snow conditions. Yes,
I think so too. So I think this is an all year round thing as far as like distractions and stuff go.
Yes, there's more and more distractions out there.
So whether it's your cell phone or your music or your passengers, things like that.
I hate my passengers when they're just yakking it.
Just when they're yakking, not
religion
just in
and politics. It's like I can't deal with that right now.
Yeah. So one of the things too is if you're driving in some falling snow and things like that, maybe tell your passengers to kind of keep it down a little bit.
Chill out a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So you can focus on the road.
Yeah.
There's that old thing is that, well, I'm looking for an address. I turn down the volume of the radio so I can see better. It's kind of like the same in a way that tell my passengers to kind of keep it down.
Like I can't concentrate. I'm looking for something.
That's focus. One of the best sub habits that YD has in the wintertime, there's quite a few that are really, really helpful in the wintertime. One of my favorites or two of my favorites are stagger and ground view.
Lovely.
I love the stagger so that you're driving beside open space. So if you do need to move into another lane,
you've got room,
to
do
that.
Exactly.
And it could be slushy. It doesn't have to be falling snow.
No.
Right? Anything that allows you to move. And because the combination of drivers who don't clear their vehicles, you've got room to go if they're trying to change lanes without knowing you're there because they can't see you because the windows are covered. Right. So staggering away from vehicles who the driver has not prepared themselves to drive.
And they're going to make a move. They can't see what's beside them. And next thing you know, you're in trouble.
That's right. And that's where ground viewing comes in.
I love that one.
Because you can't always see the lane markings.
I didn't know when I came to young drivers and I was doing these things. I just didn't put a name on it.
That's
right. Like, wow.
Now we have a name. It's easier to refer to.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So someone may not realize they're drifting into your lane.
Right.
Because they can't see lane markings.
Can't see lane markings.
So maybe a little tap of the horn.
A little, hello, I'm over here.
That's right. But because you've ground viewed, it gives you that early notification to say, hey, listen, I need to do
that with any kind of movement out there.
That's right.
Yeah, but especially in the winter.
Or the drivers who can't stop. and you're doing a left center right scan at an intersection,
And you go, oh my God.
and you see a vehicle, you ground view.
They're not going to be able to stop in time.
That's right, because they were late braking,
Right.
they
Or
didn't
the
adjust,
conditions.
or no winter tires.
But we can do something about it if we know what's there.
That's right. So that's where my two favorite ones are.
Mhm.
And although I personally have trained all my kids how to drive, and I give everybody reminders in my family
Yes.
before every winter,
Right.
and they know this is the case.
Yes.
And for the last 10 plus years, I've been doing that.
Mhm.
And I think they expect it. So I think it's nice that we're able to help people who this is their very first winter, or they
Yes.
forgot from the last 8 months
All of
what
those
winter driving
new
was all about.
students that have learned to drive in the summer, which is the most convenient time, but it's always good to learn if you can drive in the winter. But they're going to come into this situation not knowing,
That's right.
right?
That's right. And I would love to give people winter driving lessons, but you can't always forecast the snow.
No. Well, even the weatherman can't forecast the snow.
No.
It's the only job you can have where you're wrong 50% of the time and still keep your job.
And still
right?
keep your job. Exactly. So staying within the city environment is something that we'll often do. Like we'll commute to school or work or things like that.
Right.
Go
The
shopping.
short commute.
But sometimes we have to leave to go visit family outside the city,
Right.
or maybe even take a weekend away.
Yes.
So what are some of the things that you would recommend to have people carry in their vehicle as a basic kit?
Well,
if they're going to leave the
yeah, we talked about the washer fluid for the slush. We're going to need an awful lot of that. There are a number of things you should. What happens if you get stuck? What's a good thing to use? Kitty litter.
Yeah.
Clumping or non-clumping, your choice.
Make sure it's fresh kitty litter, not the.
Well, I have tried the other, but yeah, it makes a bit of a mess.
It is a bit of a mess.
Don't do that. So that's something people don't think about. So why do you carry kitty litter? Well, if I happen to get stuck somewhere, it's good. It's biodegradable, and we're not hurting anything.
That's right.
Shovel.
A shovel.
Good.
I get a small shovel. I have enough for all the vehicles in my household, and including the collapsible one.
Yes, I have a collapsible one too. Will fit into like a briefcase-sized container, and actually, that safety kit carries a lot of things.
That's right. So a shovel,
safety vests,
flares,
or
even reflective triangles.
Yeah,
something like that.
triangles, things like that would be good. I can remember years ago talking or listening about people who get stuck on the 402 out near Sarnia. They were there for quite a long time in a heavy, heavy snowstorm.
Yeah.
Almost 24 hours. So think of what you might need in 24 hours stuck in your car. Food source.
Yeah, I think
water source.
Yeah. So having bringing in fresh water, not the plastic containers, leaving those in the vehicle, because if they freeze, they'll expand, and it could crack the plastic,
things
right?
like that.
So bringing in fresh water is a good idea.
Yeah.
But nuts or granola bars, things like
anything like that,
breakfast
a little bit
bars.
of energy.
That's right. So
something
you get
that's
some protein.
It's going to last a while.
Protein is always good.
Yeah, don't be. And people think, well, there's snow out there. I can eat snow. No, don't eat snow, because now in a cold situation, you're going to cool your body down too.
That's right.
You need something with some warmth. So speaking of warmth,
yes,
candles.
Candles are good with a lighter.
Yeah, and maybe a bottle of wine. No, not a bottle of wine.
A candle, but in a
container,
like a soup container. Clean out the soup container, and also what it does is the metal of the soup container. It's not going to make it super warm in your vehicle.
No, but it does radiate the heat.
It does. It really does. And and it's got a place to carry the wax.
Yes,
things like that. So it could be a tea light candles are kind of small, but
kind of small, but anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a blanket too.
Blankets are good.
Blankets
it doesn't take. Everybody thinks, holy moly, what am I going to put in my trunk?
I
can't put my groceries in there, but most of that stuff that we're talking about here, I have in a briefcase-sized container.
That's right.
That has all of that stuff in it.
And you can get a lot of these things around your home. You don't have to, go out and buy a kit like that. But one of the things, as far as every driver should have, and not depends on where you are in our province right now, or whether you got some snow in the forecast soon. But make sure you have a nice scraper with a snow brush.
Oh, we all have a 16-foot extendable snow scraper in Canada.
Hey, almost, right?
Almost.
I remember years back, my next door neighbor sent her 14-year-old son outside to scrape off her car using a large soup spoon. and it was terrible. And I felt bad for him. So I gave him one of my scrapers. I said, here, this will be a lot easier. Yeah. And I have extra ones at home.
Oh, because
they break.
All kinds of them. They do.
They break.
They wear out.
They do. So I keep extra ones, so that way, there's always one when I get home and realize that after the first one had broken.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really traveling on long trips too, I mean, I can remember a kit that you put together for one of our classrooms in there. It's a little Rubbermaid container. It had everything in there, and I'd be pulling things out for the students showing, and then I'd get to the toilet paper. what the heck?
Well, sometimes when you're stuck, you
change of
really got to
clo-
go.
A change of clothes. It's not a bad idea.
No.
Especially on a long trip.
You know, if you go to dig out and your gloves get all wet, you don't want to put them
You
on because
need
you
a
can
new
get
pair.
frostbite, right?
That's right.
So having an extra pair of gloves, another pair of
Yep.
toques, and socks too.
Extra socks.
Now,
Always
so-
good.
Because it gets cold, like you talked about someone who was stuck in their vehicle for 24 hours.
Almost, yes.
So one of the things is insulation too. So your boots might get wet inside. And first of all, if you're not having boots in the vehicle and you've got like running shoes on or whatever,
Not good.
and you're digging out snow, they're going to get soaking wet, right?
And if you get cold, the problem is, and we learned this in a few survival exercises we've done, once you get cold, you're going to start to shiver and shake.
Yep.
And you're going to freeze
That's right.
at some point. But the other thing, too, is don't overdress for it.
Layers.
Because then you sweat. And when you sweat, you freeze. When you freeze, you die.
Well, yeah, let's not do that because it ruins
Let's not
your day.
do that, right?
It can ruin your day.
It makes your day. But the thing is, you got to dress appropriately for it.
You do. And I like to layer down. We talked about
Yes.
hoods and things like that
Mhm.
and whatever. Once it's warm in my driving in my vehicle, if I'm going for a longer drive outside my city,
Mhm.
then I am going to disrobe my toque and my gloves I
Sure.
don't have on.
You can
And
open things
open up my jacket.
because the car is
maybe-
going to be warm.
That's right. Maybe even take my jacket off, put it in
Sure.
the back seat. The other thing I like to keep in the car as far as a kit is 2 plastic bags.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why would we have 2 plastic bags?
Well, if I get wet inside my boots and putting my dry socks on,
then I
put
know
my
what
feet
you
back in the
do.
boots, those dry socks become wet.
That's right. So
then
you
instead
put the plastic bag on.
That's right.
And then go into your boots.
That's right. And it looks kind of silly when you see the top of the plastic bags outside your boots. But you know what? My feet are warm because it also acts as another insulator.
That's right.
I was involved in Scouts Canada for many years,
Ah.
and all my kids were involved. And we'd go on hikes, and we had plastic bags.
We would do the same thing with air cadets on survival exercises.
right.
Much
So-
the same.
You're not necessarily going to use them all the time, but if you do get stuck and you had to
Yep.
dig your vehicle out and you realize that inside your boots got wet, it's a great way to
Yeah.
make sure that you don't suffer any other problems.
Exactly.
from doing that.
Exactly. Yep.
So when should you not drive though, Brian?
Well, I usually think Mondays and Fridays is a good day for me not to drive, generally speaking. That's me. No. When should I not drive in the winter?
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the forecast.
Right.
Let's take a look at the roads out there. There are times when we just shouldn't be on the road.
Yeah.
What's the importance of my drive?
That's
I have
right.
to just go to the grocery store? Could that wait?
That's right. And if you're commuting to work and things like that, and you're generally going in rush hour, if you contact your supervisor and saying,
Look,
I'm going to be in a little bit later.
Yep.
I want to wait for the plows.
right.
Right? It's a good
Shift
idea.
your times a bit.
And now quickly a note about plows. Don't pass the snow plows.
No.
Be patient. You'll get there.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
Rather get there late than not at all.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
But yeah, so delaying until your streak is plowed is a good idea.
Mhm.
I had a long driveway where I used to live.
Right.
And when I knew that it was going to snow a lot the night before, I used to park my car at the end of the driveway. So I didn't have to shovel my entire driveway to get out.
Just enough to get out.
Just enough to get to reach the road.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And the rule of thumb is that the snow plow always goes by right after you shovel.
Of course it does.
That's right.
Yeah.
So-
Snow plows, we don't want to mess with those. I can remember driving up 69 Highway one time before I was married. I was going to see my then future wife. Of course, it was a huge snowstorm. And I was in behind the plow. I was driving safe.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not going to pass. First of all, it's a monster snowstorm that I can't see around anyway.
that's right. And we talked about following distance as well. And
Yes.
and if it's snowing at night, one of the things is being able to see.
And it's worse at night.
It is worse at night. So having a larger following distance helps you see further ahead.
Yes.
You improve your minimum mile lead time. But the other thing too is that at night, you have your headlights that can often be almost hypnotizing yourself with the falling snow.
Yes, exactly.
So high beams or low beams in falling snow.
Well, let's see. You go out on a nice, beautiful, snowy night. Those wonderful big snowflakes that are coming. It's pretty,
Yeah.
right? And all of a sudden you say, well, I'm going to turn my high beams on in this highway out here. And poof, it's like looking at the top of this desk.
Yeah,
You can't see a thing.
that's right.
So let's get the low beams
Low
on.
beams on. And
Right.
even if you have fog lights available in your vehicle.
Even better, because they shine a little bit lower towards the surface.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Keep looking well ahead as much as possible, though.
Right.
But when it gets to a point where it's really difficult to see, pull off the road, but not just to the shoulder.
No, we
get
need
into
to
a
be
parking
clear.
lot. If you can get into a well-lit parking lot,
Right.
it's a good idea. Just wait it out a little bit.
Yep.
And when you're talking about, I've mentioned a few times about you're leaving the city, you're going to go visit family and friends. Send them a text to say, I'm leaving now. I should be there in this time.
Right.
That way they know that, okay, you're a 3-hour drive away and now it's 3 hours, you're not there. Now it's 3.5, you're not there. Now they're like, okay, you're now delayed. Let's find out. And then you can even text them and saying, I pulled over, I'm waiting.
Sure.
Because you don't want to have to unless you've got the Bluetooth, and even sometimes the Bluetooth can be distracting.
Well, there again, it comes down to distractions as well.
You want to have
it's better off in those conditions, especially to get safely off the road somewhere, and then
That's right. That's right. Or even postpone the trip and say, I pulled off the road. I'm going to spend the night, and then I'm going to head back out in the morning.
Right.
So, and even the jurisdiction you're going to, you may not have snow where you are. I remember a time where I was clearing out my car of snow. It snowed. It dumped overnight. And I'm, a lot of time clearing out my driveway and clearing off my car. And I had to call my first student. I said, I'm going to be about 10 minutes late because of the snow. And they said, snow? What do you mean? I said, have you not looked outside? And she said, it's raining.
Yes.
And she lived 10 minutes from me.
Yes, that happens.
Just down the escarpment. So the difference is where I was living, even though it was 10 minutes away, the environment was totally different.
Yeah.
So you want to be prepared for that.
Yeah. How many times have you gone out on a bright, beautiful, sunny day, and all of a sudden it's like white out?
That's right. Now, for the new driver who is learning to drive in the winter for the very first time, I think it's a great idea. They can go out with someone who is seasoned, experienced, like a driving instructor.
Yes,
and I know you're available.
Yo, certainly.
And part of that is getting comfortable with your surroundings, not just because it is snowy, but what can your vehicle do, things like that. Getting advice from someone you trust as a good driver is better than getting advice from someone who's just been driving.
Right.
So people who've been driving for 20 years may have developed bad habits.
True.
Right. So getting a professional opinion is a good idea, even if it's just one lesson.
Yeah. It wouldn't take very much.
That's right.
There's a lot of differences in the winter, too. We haven't talked about things like when that snow is all piled up, the plows have been around, cleared things off. The roads are pretty good.
Yeah.
What's your visibility like at an intersection looking through a snowbank?
That's right.
Things that we don't necessarily consider.
There are a lot of things that a lot of people don't consider. And so like black ice. What is black ice?
What is black ice? It's that stuff you just can't see. It's that fine sheen on the road. Looks like it's just paved. But next thing you know.
So here's something for the viewers. If you think about the road surface in the wintertime, especially if you've been out driving and so forth, if I ask you guys, what is the color of the pavement in the wintertime? They might say black.
That's correct.
But what color is it? It's grayish white.
Grayish white.
It's grayish white. So if it's black, it could be black ice.
That's right.
You could have that, as you say, that sheen. So,
and you may be looking at areas driving along, say on a rural highway where it's nice, it's beautiful, sun is shining. And we get all those lovely little snaky trails of snow coming across, your tracks and whatnot. And people don't realize that sun is actually melting that snow as it goes across the pavement, creating that ice.
That's right. Especially if it's like -3, -4. Not super, super cold, but cold enough that moisture adheres to the road surface.
What about bridges?
Yeah. I know that it's icy not just on top of the bridge, but also
in
underneath
the shaded area underneath.
That's
where
right.
The sun hasn't got to it yet.
It's where the sun don't shine.
That's right.
Not where that, but the other place.
That. Yeah.
So a lot of that is also the air current that circulates above and below the bridge. That air current causes that the black ice.
Quite often we do see on some bridges and whatnot. Remember, I could never understand, what does it mean the bridge ices before the pavement? I went, isn't the bridge paved? Well, it is, but it's because it does ice because it's up in the air somewhere.
That's right.
It's not insulated by the ground.
That's right. So I think in short, we really have to prepare ourselves for wintertime. We can enjoy the sights. beautiful fresh fallen snow is
It's
wonderful. It really is nice. But part of it is making those adjustments and deciding, should you drive? Make the preparation now in the fall before winter hits.
So we also have to be very alert out there too, because as much as we can encourage our drivers to do that, and we do that ourselves, not every driver out there does all of it.
No.
We have to assume that they could make mistakes or things could go wrong. So we've got to be very alert and aware of what the other drivers are doing as well. Our driving may be nice and fine, but they could still cause us a problem if we're not careful.
And I think as a new driver, you can learn by watching. You don't have to say anything.
Right.
Sit in the front passenger seat on a snow-covered road and you watch the driver, especially if you think the person driving is a pretty decent driver, and watch when they come off the gas.
Right.
Watch how they brake. Watch how much space they require to make a turn. Watch how they're adjusting to the other drivers on the road and learn from what they're doing. If they're not as good of a driver and you see what they're doing and it doesn't make you feel comfortable, a little note in the back of your head saying, I don't want to do the same thing.
No.
Yeah. So if they're braking late and you don't like the feeling of that, what's the opposite of that? So find the countermeasure of something that you don't like,
right,
and find out what can you do differently, or the opposite. What is the opposite of that to allow you to feel better?
To allow you to work on it. Right. And get off that gas an awful lot sooner.
That's right.
If you're driving in snow, well, there's a little bit of friction there that's going to help you slow down a lot more. That way, when I go to touch the brake, I'm at a lesser speed and I'm not going to slip, slide, and skid.
And I think what some people do too is, and we talk about waiting for the snow plows, is they want to avoid all the heavy traffic and they drive in side streets. Problem is a lot of the side streets are worse.
Very worse.
And as the winter continues, the snow banks get onto the road as well, and it makes the roads narrower.
Everything is a lot narrower. Right.
So stay on the roads that have been plowed and cleared.
Right.
Is
Stick
I think
to the
best.
middle of things. As best you can when necessary.
I think so. And we're Canadians. We have snow.
Yeah.
We have snow. Expect it. We have cold temperatures. Expect it. Unless you don't plan on driving anywhere, don't plan on going anywhere from now until April, you want to get adjusted to this.
That's not going to happen.
It is not going to happen. So I think having a plan of attack is a really good idea for doing that.
I think
so.
And
make sure you're up for it. And maybe go out on a weekend and get familiar with things.
Like we said, get to a nice little spot where it's nice and safe and you can see what the car does in the snow. Doesn't take very much. You don't have to go doing donuts in a parking lot to figure this out.
No. And I'm not a fan of that. I've heard people say that, to understand how to get out of a skid, you should do donuts. The best way to get out of a skid is not to get into one.
Not get in one first. That's right.
That's right.
Look where you want to go and slow things down.
That's right. And skids are caused by change of direction or change of speed.
Right.
And, the difference is if the driver ahead keeps slipping and sliding, but I'm not, and I'm right behind them, what are they doing differently than me?
Right.
Well, it could be their harsher acceleration, harsher braking, or jerky steering.
Right.
So you want to give yourself time to accelerate, time to brake, and time to make smooth steering.
Right. As say, accelerating things like that. I mean, one of the easiest things in the snow is just simply let the brake go first.
That's right.
Pause a second. Breathe. Then we can go for the gas. Let's not go for. It's not like an on switch and an off switch.
It's not.
Right.
I think with
it's a dimmer switch.
It is a dimmer switch. A lot of our vehicles in the wintertime are front wheel drive or not, like an all wheel drive type thing. And the most common skid now, once we got rid of a lot of our rear wheel drive vehicles, is an understeer.
Right.
When you're turning into a corner. So you're going too quickly and you turn the wheels to the right, but the car keeps plowing straight ahead.
Yes.
And it's like people panic and they turn more.
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And the problem is two problems. One, it doesn't work. You keep plowing. Two, if you all of a sudden your front wheels do grip, now all of a sudden your car is boom
going sharply in the wrong direction.
And then you could end up hitting something or someone. So if you turn your wheels to the right, for example, on a right turn, and your wheels are not gripping, the best thing to do is get them back to straight again and just ease off the gas some more.
Ease off the gas a little more.
You might even be able to brake a little bit because now the wheels are rotating.
That's right.
And you know what? Worst case scenario is you miss your turn and you double
go
back.
around the block.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way possible.
It is.
So yeah,
I think people are afraid to miss their turn sometimes. It's like, oh man, I missed it.
Yeah.
But go around the block. What are you losing? Maybe a minute?
That's right. And you know that when you ease off the gas, the weight of the vehicle shifts slightly forward.
It does, yes.
So if your front wheels have lost traction, the slightly easing up
puts more traction,
puts more weight, and where you have more weight,
bigger footprint on the tire.
That's right. The size of your tire is about the size of your hand,
Mm-hmm.
and it widens that.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea just to do that. But proactively, you might want to go around the corner a little bit slower than normal.
Yes.
In those conditions, until you get a feel of what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the best way to avoid a skid is not to get into one.
Yeah.
So smooth gas, I should say acceleration, because it could be electric cars.
Could be.
So there's no gas pedal in an electric car. There's an accelerator.
I tried one once. It was a one pedal operation. It was very confusing at first.
Yeah, we'll stay away from that. But we want a smooth acceleration, smooth braking, and gentle steering.
Right. And I think we have to remember too that as much as we do, certain conditions, they're not always the same. We're talking generally about snowy conditions here, but slushy conditions.
Yeah.
The car's going to react a little differently in all of these cases.
That's right. In slushy conditions, if you're changing lanes and there's a lot of slush, wait for the lane change. Plan your route, make early lane changes. But if you look ahead and you see that there's a little bit less slush up ahead, that's the time to change lanes.
I will usually look for a spot that maybe, say, a transport truck has gone across into the other lane, and I go, "Oh, thank you for clearing a path for me."
That's right.
Here we go.
That's right.
Then I don't get dragged and pulled.
Yeah, because the slush can push
through.
up against the sidewall of the tire a little bit and kind of force you from not changing.
Right.
I saw you just did a blind spot check.
I did.
So it's good because you never know who's going to be sitting beside you.
That's what I was checking for.
That's right. So we have all these electronic devices on our vehicle.
Oh, they're wonderful, eh? Technology's great.
They are. Our vehicles are semi-autonomous now.
Yeah. What happens if it fails, though?
That's right. So sometimes the sensors could be covered in snow, slush, ice, things like that.
And
they may not work.
Reason to clear your car off.
That's
properly,
right. So if something happens, or as you're clearing it off, you adjust the sensor by mistake, you push it, you adjust it, whatever, don't rely on them. So like, let's say you have the blind spot monitor. It's not flashing, so therefore it's clear. And so you just move over. Wrong. So have a check anyway, because as you just said, what happens if it doesn't work?
Yes.
So clearing your vehicle off will help. In my driveway, I have a 2-car driveway. We back up as much as possible, and we don't want to hit the garage door, and I don't want to hit the vehicle that's in the driveway first.
Yeah.
So I have a backup camera on my vehicle. So just a little thumb, clean it off every day as part of your circle check. That way you know it's going to work, so you can maximize your visibility.
Well, that's right. And back to clearing cars off, these days we just got a new vehicle. It's got sensors coming out of my ears.
I wonder what that was.
Oh, okay. And it's got sensors on the front. It's got sensors on the back. It's got this, that, front collision avoidance systems and everything else. If I don't clear all of those sensors off, none of that stuff is going to work anyway.
Yeah.
So you may be assuming it's like it's going to save you, but it's like, no, you didn't clear that sensor off. I'm not stopping for you.
And I think one time I was at a gas station, and I was using the squeegee, but not just for my windows. I cleaned off my headlights,
yes,
my signal lights, and my brake lights.
And the guy comes out and yells at you and says, "Why don't you just buy a car wash?"
No, actually, there was a person at the pump across from me who commented out loud to me saying, "I've never seen anybody do that." I said, "But if your brake lights are covered in slush and slime, they're not going to be as active, especially in the daylight.
Nobody's going to notice them."
And she said, "That's a great idea." And I said, "You're welcome."
Yes.
So I think I taught her something just by the fact that she observed. So it comes back to what I said before about just by watching people.
Right.
Watch what you think works and adopt it.
Seems like it works for you.
That's
then
right.
Take it on. Yeah.
So is winter driving doable, Brian?
Of course.
Yeah. I think
We're
it
in
is
Canada.
too.
It has to be doable.
It has to be doable.
But we have to make adjustments for it.
That's right. And it starts in the fall and continues until you're done the winter.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're good here.
I think so. Now we just got to cross our fingers and hope it doesn't snow this winter. I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe.
But let's be prepared for it.
Just in case it does.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Brian.